Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Thursday, January 26th edition of the White Cliffs Committee. Today, we're going to be reviewing the grading, I suppose, is the two RFPs that we got. I guess unless there's anything other to start, why don't we just hit the minutes real quick so that I don't forget to do that later. I did not have any comments, but if anybody would like to make a motion on those, we could, or have any comments on those.
Just trying to get my dates in order. All right, let me make a motion to accept the December 21st, 2022 meeting minutes for the White Cliffs Committee.
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Julianne?
Aye.
Norm?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Diana?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Approved.
I can make a motion to accept the meeting minutes of the White Cliffs Committee that was held on January 12th, 2023.
Second.
Thank you. Julianne?
Aye.
Norm?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
And Diana?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Thank you for that. Brett, I guess we're going to kick off here. We'll have you kick off this part of the discussion.
Sure. Thank you very much. So what I had
Thank you.
left you all with was a little bit of homework to fill out your grading matrices as it parallels the or it tracks the RFP itself. You've all done that. You've submitted them to me, and we discussed the last meeting that I would both aggregate those results, but also allow you time to discuss independently. And so I've done that. I've attributed essentially point values to each of the categories, with unacceptable being a 0, less advantageous 1, advantageous 2, and highly advantageous 3. Aggregated all of those after you've sent all of your responses to me, and kind of tabulated or aggregated the scores at the end. And I'll just report that the scores aggregated for HAPO, or the Historic Artifact Preservation Organization, of 67 total points, and Metro West Community Development of 112 total points. There were a handful of areas where some of you had left blanks, but you left blanks in both proposals, so they sort of null each other out in any event. Most of that was just on the interview question category. So I'm sort of putting the football back in the chairman's court, or whatever I don't know sports, so I shouldn't even start things with sports analogies. But so to go through the individual proposals, if you'd like, and we can answer any questions you might have.
Yeah, so I've never actually done one of these before, so I guess, we heard the scoring analogy there. It was almost 2 to 1, but we should probably just go around the horn here and talk about what people thought and ask whether they have any questions. I guess I'll start. While I appreciated HAPO's presentation, and I thought it was creative, I just kind of thought it really did not meet any of the requirements for what we're looking for. And I don't believe we ever even really got numbers from them. And whatever scanty numbers we had didn't seem close to being able to preserve the building, the White Cliffs structure, which was sort of the primary mission that we were charged with. So on that basis, I really just felt that it was wholly inadequate. On the Metro West proposal, I think it does solve the problem. It does create a mechanism that was professionally prepared that gets us to the place of preserving the White Cliffs, while at the same time moving a lot of the financial risk of that off of the town onto somebody else. So I thought their presentation was very well done. They certainly had the professionals here that did it. Whether that's what the town ultimately wants for that site, I think is a little bit of a different question as to whether or not the proposal that we got accomplishes the goals that we set. And I think that it does. Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman, I just would note that you mentioned to it, we had requested financial backups and resumes on all the principals in the organization and the structure, and also the updated presentation files, or the basic presentation files that they used, and the additional budget, and we, to date, have not received those, just FYI.
Well, I can go. I made some notes. So I broke this down in my mind into two areas. The primary one was the experience of the two proposals of the staff and the risk associated with those two proposals. And by risk, I mean the probability of success of the project. So when I look at Metro West, you know, they've done this before. They've had that team together for years. Yesterday, we were fortunate just to see one of the projects they're doing in Medway. The amount of experience, the skill sets that they're bringing to the program are amazing. I mean, certainly I'm tuned in more to the history part than anything else, but the people that are involved with evaluating the building, the restoration of the building, 3 of them are award winners by the state. This is a serious level of people and competence that would be involved, and that certainly impressed me. So they're highly qualified, they're very familiar with the financial needs. They've done this before. There's a lot of ways to get financing for this from the public. They're not new at all to these, the appropriations of funding and the like. Very impressed. With HAPO, I liked his creativity. I think the fact that we did look in the past at a possibility of having an event space built, an additional event space built onto the property. I liked that he wanted it to be open to the public more. But my concerns are the experience, especially of the principals. They've never done anything like this before. The experience of the primary principal is that he took an antique boat and retrofitted it and restored it. This is not that. This is something much more elaborate. I give him credit for finding a better team. When he came in with his presentation, he had really no team. He was the only one here. He's put together some members of the team that look pretty good. I looked them up online. But they've never worked together. I just have a feeling there's going to be a tremendous amount of hiccups in the system. And so that comes down to the risk part. And I do have a personal opinion, so this is not certainly of the board. Need. I think the town needs housing. I like the idea of having affordable housing. I think it's important to the community. I'm proud that we have 10% and can do better. I really don't think that we need more office space, even if you call it cooperative offices. I don't think we need food truck pads on that property, and these small units that he wants to put in are unique, and they might be good for little startups, but honestly, I don't envision them on the property. So he added some things that are good, but I think overall, his experience is a challenge.
All right, I'll go next. I agree with pretty much everything that has just been stated. I was also looking at this from the point of view of risk, and I was super impressed with Metro West. And I do remember during the feasibility phase, when we looked at the sort of fiscal options before us, given the immense cost of preserving this house, I initially was not excited about the idea of housing of any type being added to the site. But after hearing and reading what Metro West has done on other sites, I think this would be a brilliant solution for many reasons. The other risk factor that I see is that financially, I don't see other options available for this property in the future. And so I think we're fortunate to have gotten the Metro West proposal. I think the cost of preserving that building and leaving it as a standalone structure is, at this point, it's probably closer to 15 million, given the cost of construction and the unknowns that will be discovered during construction. So I am happy to see that we have a proposal that reduces our risk in a couple of different ways. I also agree. I thought we had a very creative proposal from HAPO, and I appreciate that they brought that to the town and the work that they did in doing that.
So let me expand on the HAPO's process. They're kind of ad hoc in that they assemble a group of people with some unique ideas like recycled storage containers and greenhouse as a venue. But the ad hoc team is also reflected in their ideas because they don't go together. Some of the ideas of preserving the building and the landscape, we agree with, because that's part of our criteria. But then having recycled containers don't give you much by the way of attractive architecture. The only way they do is by destroying their nature, which is the utilitarian box. Having a venue in a glass structure is unworkable. It works in the spring, in the fall. Dealing with the light in the summer months would be terrible as a venue, and the heat loss in the winter would be a disaster. So I appreciate what they're trying to do. He has a great set of ideas. This is not the project for those ideas. He needs to get more experience with his team. Compared to Metro West, having a chance to meet their team and seeing one of their projects, they have extensive experience in both dealing with historic properties and obviously affordable housing. And Northborough as a community has experience in taking historic properties, making them energy efficient, and providing affordable housing. We took 2 historic structures next to Trinity Church on Main Street across from the library. That's what we did with the town funds, purchased it, partnered with Habitat, and I see this as just another example of how the committee and the town can commit to historic preservation, energy efficiency, and affordable housing. So I'm certainly in favor of Metro West.
You're up.
Well, as I guess I will be the dissenter. For me, one of the major criteria was use by the residents who have already invested $2.4 million in the property. And the Metro West, if that's the ability for any resident to go on that property and use the community room is very, very vague. I mean, we had a conversation about that yesterday, and some of their financing is contingent on the whole project being housing. So that, that's a criteria that may or may not be met. The other problem I have is that, for me, I don't have enough information about affordable housing need in this town. I don't have enough information about how affordable housing is actually financed and what, if any, benefit it is to the town in terms of property tax, for example. We're told that we will get taxed, but then there was a conversation about, well, that might be an arrangement with the tax assessors. And I agree, it's a good thing to provide affordable housing. Every town should do their share, and we are doing our share. But when we look at 52 units, how many people from Northborough will actually qualify for that? I don't have that number yet. So let's say it's 10. That might even be a high number. I mean, we heard an example of a town that put in affordable housing and no one in the town actually qualified for it. So I have so many questions about the affordable housing project. However, I do agree with you that that group seems to have their act together very well. They had a beautiful presentation. We went and saw their project yesterday, which was nice. I mean, some people liked it more than others. But that brought to mind another question. When we saw the completed project of, I think, 42 units, a very large footprint. It looked like a very large footprint. I'd like to see where they're going to put it, marked out, and see how much of the property it's actually going to take up. So the HAPO, I like that project better. I agree it's a little fluid, but maybe they deserve another conversation with us. So that's my opinion.
Julianne, do you think that, would you be in favor of supporting HAPO, or were you thinking neither one of them therefore would
I think all of us have more legitimate concerns about their funding and how they're bringing the project together, the whole volunteer aspect of their work. And I think that I would like to sit down with them, with people who know, who are architects, Brett, to start really getting some concrete answers from them.
Okay. But do you think that that would be for our committee, or would it be for the, if they were awarded a contract and negotiate and then have all of that stuff explored at another time, or just, in terms of process, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking that's our
I
responsibility.
think that's ours.
Yes, unfortunately, because if we decide on something today, that will start the whole, the train that's left the station. And then it's gonna be months and months of zoning changes and going through the committees. And, I mean, if enough of you are willing to sit down with Halco and get more concrete information, that's potentially one meeting. We've been at this for, it's 2016? We decided on buying the property, it's 2023. Why do we have to do that and do this part, which is so important, in a couple of months?
Well, I think whoever it is, it's gonna be years, not months, even if we.
Yeah.
with
But
all due
our
respect to
part
Brett
right
and his
now-
non-sports analogies, even if we advance the ball today, we're not gonna be, it's gonna be years before anything happens there.
No, I totally understand that. What I'm saying is, why is our job suddenly at 100 miles an hour to get this, to get something proposed?
I think our mandate was to give them an answer by 2019.
Oh.
Recognize,
We also have a budget that's going to continue to be town money the longer we take. But to your point, I want to respond to what you're describing. Can you share what you would view as a positive outcome of the meeting with HAPO, given that they don't have the qualifications to do the work?
I guess I would say to you, what do you mean they don't have the qualifications?
Well, for one, they don't have architects that have any relevant experience. The construction, that they have a group of construction professionals that are being assembled. You need a contractor who's done real high-end preservation work. So I don't see that piece. I don't see that they have the qualifications in design or construction. They do have a good consultant to help them with the National Register. But if we don't have a financial pro forma, why are we at the table with them? If we don't see any fiscal viability, again, what would the positive outcome of an additional conversation yield?
Give them a chance to come forward with that, how they're going to do it. And, if we say, we feel better if you had a professional architect, let them see if they can find someone. I just, maybe I have more time than others, but I don't see what another conversation with them how that would be a problem.
Well,
My,
risk,
sorry.
can I go? Absolutely. Diana and Norm addressed the risk. So apply that to the property we're most interested in, a historic gem. And their methodology is to use volunteer labor and donations to restore this property. That's a non-starter for me. They don't even know what the Secretary of Interior's guidelines are for the procedures and the methods you use to restore a historic property. So, they're a wonderful group of people, I'm sure, but this is not for them. This is inappropriate. They don't have the experience, they don't have the skills, they don't have the knowledge. And interviewing them to find that out, I think is a waste of time.
There's also a public process that we're involved in right now. They were asked to submit, they submitted, wasn't a fully complete submission. They had another opportunity to complete the submission. They still didn't complete the submission. So Brett can speak better than I to the sort of requirements of the fact that this is a public RFP process. But I think having another conversation where we're sort of encouraging them to give us new team members and new ideas, seems to me as if it's not in line with the public procurement or RFP in this case, process.
So that's a legitimate argument, and I was unaware that once someone has submitted something, they're not allowed to, you know, provide more. But, you know, it's not going to change my mind that Metro West is a good option for the town. Not with all of the questions I still have outstanding of how actually the affordable housing will work for Northborough.
You have to keep in mind, we're making, at least if I understand the process correctly, we're making a recommendation. Nothing gets done until this goes to town meeting. So there's a time lag here. It's doubtful to ever be this April's time meeting. So there's a lot of time. Those questions you have are all valid questions. There's a lot of time to have them addressed by Metro West. And in the end, if it's not addressed properly, it won't pass town meeting. So in regarding, just follow up on the other proposal. When the primary person came in and gave us the presentation for HAPO, he learned a lot from us. He didn't know a lot. We asked him the right questions, and if you look at the responses, he'll get back to us. So after he spoke to us, that's when he realized, oh, I need a better architect. Oh, I need a better design group. So we were teaching him. It ain't supposed to be that way. Because that means if he comes back with more questions, we'll be teaching him again. I don't think our role is to teach the proposer how to do the project. I mean, I give him a lot of credit because he did a ton of homework in those last 2 weeks. But he should have come in with all his ducks in a row, recognizing what needs to be done. So my criticism is, that's not our responsibility to guide him through the process. And that's one of my concerns with it. And I know I sound pretty negative on that, but I want to highlight the fact that I like the fact that he was creative, and I think that he's got some great ideas for the town. He lives in town, several of his subs are in town, and I'd like him to scratch his head and see what he can do for the town with some of his ideas down the road. I don't want him to say, I'm not to work in the town of Northborough again.
Yeah, I would say that while it may feel like a fast-paced process, I think that's because it's an efficient process that's designed to get a result. I don't know what the town's experience is with prior RFPs, but 60 days is a pretty wide window. I've responded to RFPs that required, they gave about 10 days notice to respond, and are far more complicated than a single property scope. So I would say that a 60-day window should be enough time. Plus, we advertised quite a bit before that. And that's the whole point of the process, structured the way it is to inform and educate as much as humanly possible through all of the due diligence materials that we're able to gather, so that the community can be ready to go when the RFP opens and they can have the time necessary to ask questions and respond. And I would push back only to say, as a matter of process, that those conversations that we're talking about are typically the ones undertaken during the RFP window, the response window, and during the presentation. And just a matter of sort of administrative business, there were certain benchmarks that we, while not required in the RFP, we asked for: financial information, background sheets on all the principals, and some other additional sort of legal frameworks that were meant to be reviewed by me and presented to you, and I've done that. I still, after 3 or 4 weeks, have not received any substantive response from HAPO. And that is a problem for this process, that if you do not have the information, it's very difficult for you to analyze and evaluate that information as a body. And so I'm concerned about the responsiveness and the level of detail that is moving through this process through the HAPO folks. And generally, just the level of detail in their financial proposal, which is, speaks a little bit to risk allocation and how, I think the easiest analogy is to look at what work was done by DBVW and the estimates that were put in that document. That was 2 or 3 years ago now. What year are we in? 3 or 4 years ago, and that ranged from, you know, $6 to $10 million or $11 million to do any amount of substantive rehabilitation and adaptive reuse. And so a budget of what I think is now about $3.5 million all in for the mansion is far short of that, I think. And I'm not entirely certain how the model of volunteer and donated materials jives with the federal and state requirements for historic tax credit compliance and basis calculation. And there's a lot that goes in. One of the reasons these projects are so expensive is because there is an enormous administrative cost associated with administering tax credits, historic tax credits or low-income housing tax credits or whatever they are. Not most of it, but a lot of that money goes into the pockets of lawyers and accountants and consultants, and I'm in that pile, as are some of you. But that's because it's complicated and there are lots of requirements for filing and all sorts of other things. So it is a complex, and it's good to see that Nick was able to, in very short order, talk to Epsilon and some other folks that got real good intelligence and modified the proposal. That being said, it's difficult, in an absence of the information we requested, it's difficult to really understand the whole picture on that. So that's my comments on that. On the affordable housing side of things, I think I mentioned in an email to the committee, I'm happy to answer any questions about affordable housing to the best I can. In addition to this work I do, I'm an affordable housing consultant as well, and have done a tremendous amount of work in Massachusetts and throughout the country and internationally on affordable housing, and know quite a bit about the low-income housing tax credit program. I'm happy to share any information you may find helpful, or if you think that's better found elsewhere, I'm happy to step aside on that as well.
Of course, that's why we're here.
Okay, so I completely agree that it appears that Metro West has their finances in a better plan, let's put it that way. So they first get a lender who I think the word is used, they sell the tax credits to that lender, correct?
So how tax credit syndication works is, the developer would be allocated tax credits that they would then sell to an investor. Mm-hmm. That investor becomes a limited partner in the structure of the transaction, and in exchange for those tax credits, the developer gets cash today to build the project. It's a big equity infusion. It's based on a credit price it varies, it's a dollar for dollar credit against your federal or state income taxes, and so it could be 95 cents, it could be $1, depends on what the framework looks like at the time or the market looks like at the time. So they get a big equity infusion, which is money they don't have to pay back.
They don't have to pay back?
No.
Wait, no, the lender doesn't have to pay it back, but Metro West has?
No, it's an equity investment. So low-income housing tax credits, I'm the developer, I get $10 million allocation. I sell that to Diana, she's an investor, and she gets those tax credits that are worth $10 million. In exchange, she gives me $9 million. So she gets a benefit of 10%, and she gets to go to the government and pay her $10 million tax bill with something that cost her $9 million.
And so Metro West is, the bulk of the financing, though, is coming through grants,
Low-income housing tax credits.
not grants.
There's some there's some grant money that would be in there, but the low-income housing tax credit program is going to provide the majority of their funding. I can look at their pro forma of the. So
I
federal
recall-
LIHTC equity is $10 million, so about 40% of the 45%. State LIHTC is 2.6 million. Federal historic and state historic aggregate about $1 million. So a total, only about, let's see, about 18 million or so, or 17 million out of the 24 million is in an equity or soft debt position, and then about 4.5 is in hard debt, so a first mortgage that would be paid back. Soft debt just means it's forgivable. It doesn't have to be paid out of cash flow necessarily. It can be paid at a refinancing, or can be paid out of excess cash flow.
Are those grants contingent on Northborough's compliance with the state's, I don't think they're mandates, but the state's request that we comply with 40% affordable housing, that we comply with MBTA communities? So in order for them to get the grants, will the grantee look at how Northborough is complying with other
Julianne,
housing?
I can answer that. So because this property would be conveyed to a private developer, it has absolutely nothing to do with the town's compliance.
Okay.
So the ability for the town to get grants has to do with the compliance that the town has with that MBTA requirement. But they will not, they are a totally different entity. So they will not be penalized if the town of Northborough does not comply, because the municipality is totally out of the equation.
Okay, so that's good.
So they're not the property owner.
Uh-huh.
Town of Northborough will convey ownership to Metro West in this example.
Uh-huh. Okay, all right, so I'm sorry, you all probably understand this, and I still don't get it.
No,
they
there's, yeah, there aren't many people who do understand. You're in the majority, I guarantee it.
Okay, so, let's talk to me like I'm in
No, absolutely.
third grade, okay? So, I'm Metro West. I go to you, Brett, Bank of America.
Yep.
And I need $18 million to do this project, because the rest I'm gonna get through grants. Okay? Well, make up the numbers.
So Bank of America is actually one of the largest tax credit syndicator investors. So I'm wondering, is that a loan? So they're asking for about $4.2 million in actual debt from a bank. The rest of
You
it.
said that there wasn't debt.
It's both.
Nope. So there's debt and there's equity. So they've got, let's see, 10, 13, about $15 million in tax credit equity. That's historic tax credit equity and also low-income housing tax credit equity. So that's money they will get. They do not ever have to pay it back. The $4.2 million is a loan. That's a first mortgage, just like the first mortgage on your house with a local bank or a regional bank or a national bank, could be any bank really. And that will be paid back over 30 years like a traditional mortgage would be, out of monthly payments just like normal. The rest is called soft debt. So this is AHTF is the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. HOME is a federal program administered by the state. There's some DHCD funding in there from the Department of Housing and Community Development. There are all of these little pockets of money or buckets of money that are designated through the state and the federal government for certain affordable housing or economic development or infrastructure improvement things. And soft debt just means they're going to get $1 million from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. They may not have to pay that back on a monthly basis, but if they have extra money at the end of the year, that goes to pay down that debt. And if they refinance the property in 30 years and there's profit that comes out of that, that goes to pay off all of that debt that was the soft debt. So it's a real debt, it's a real burden on the property, but it's not, the state is not knocking on your door at the first of every month saying, pay me now. It's sort of patient capital that's there to incentivize developers to take on projects that are otherwise really hard to finance. And would be, if they had to take on another $5 or $6 million in debt, the cash flow from the property would not be able to service that mortgage payment every month.
I think in coordination with what you're saying, it's very important to also look at the development budget. Because people hear you saying, oh, they get to keep this amount of money, but the costs, I think, are much higher than people realize. Like a minute ago, I mentioned 15 million to preserve the property. I think that's still probably the bulk of what their construction costs will be. But that's an important part of this whole discussion too. I mean, it's not like they're just getting money to do this. They're taking on debt at the end of the day, right? So I just think that's an important piece. The other thing I just wanted to clarify, because I think I'm hearing in the community that there's some confusion about this. In this scenario, the state does not own the property.
No.
Ever.
Metro West owns it.
Correct.
Correct. And manage it, which is an important, I mean, that's actually the ideal scenario. They know how to manage it. It's not like they're gonna like toss it off to someone else. So I think that's a bonus in sort of the way that their entity is structured.
And we met Maloney, or Jason from Maloney.
Mm-hmm.
That was the management company that took us on the tour yesterday morning. And they work closely with Metro West,
Yeah, that's-
vertically integrated, I guess you'd call it.
Yeah, so that all seems reasonable right now, but when you say they're gonna take care of it all, don't they have to comply with state regulations for affordable housing? I mean,
Most of the regulations are federal regulations because they would be regulated under Section 42 of the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit, Section 42 of the IRS code, right? So, and they will have to have state regulations as well, just as well as they will have to comply with the state and federal regulations on the historic preservation component. If they receive historic tax credits from the state, they comply with the Secretary's guidelines. If they, get federal tax credits, the same. They will have to comply with those requirements.
And they have to comply with the building code, the electrical code, the plumbing code, the energy code, so it's completely regulated, the whole process.
okay, so say I'm living there and there's a power outage or something that's not fixed for 3 days and it's on the property. Who do those people go to? If they go to management and, like, how is the town building inspector involved, if at all?
So it's like if anybody lives in an apartment anywhere, you go to the landlord to get it fixed.
But sometimes the landlord doesn't.
So what's
Well,
good about
they usually
heavily regulated housing is, in a market rate, if the landlord doesn't fix your broken light bulb or your washing machine's leaking, there's not that much you can do as a single tenant, right? You can complain and you can talk to some authorities, but if it doesn't rise to the level of, in a regulated property, all of these things are heavily, heavily regulated. There are inspections that are required for all of the funding sources. The redundancy that's in affordable housing, there's an asset manager at the tax credit level, there's an asset manager at the historic tax credit level, there's an asset manager at the property level, there's going to be an asset manager for whoever takes the mortgage, and they got to make sure that all of the units are in good shape, all of the tenants are happy, because none of those people get their money if the state or the federal government says you're on notice that you are in violation of any number of regulated issues. So there's a lot of oversight in affordable housing to protect people, basically, from landlords building affordable housing, taking a bunch of taxpayer money, and then saying it's not my problem anymore. There are annual inspections from state agencies. If this has got financing through Mass Housing or any other state financing agencies, there will be annual inspections and annual certifications and extensive audit procedures that make sure everything is done according to what they've agreed to do.
Okay.
The Massachusetts Housing Bureaucracy works in that way. It's cumbersome in other ways.
I don't know if anybody here can answer my question, but I'm going to ask it. This is not, Northborough has affordable housing. We have the small project on Center Drive, and we have the much larger project on Summer Street. So this is not new to the town. So is what you're describing now, is that what happens already today in the town? I mean, I'm trying to just trying to recognize the town of Northborough has housing, has these regulations, and, you know, I just,
It all depends on how the housing is regulated. Most new affordable rental housing is developed under the low-income housing tax credit program. It's the largest, most utilized program.
but I'm trying to understand if what we already have in place today has some commonality to what we're.
It would, yeah. It's
I-
different
I-
flavors, but if Habitat has different regulations than
I just, because this is all recorded and it's gonna generate a gazillion questions, I just wanna make the recognition that, no, this is not the first affordable housing complex in town. In fact, the bigger one is on Summer Street. And this, we've done this before, we have this before, this is not a first time, situation. I just want that clarified.
If I can speak to the affordability component. So I am the point person for affordable housing in the town. So yesterday I received a report from Avalon. So every single year they have to income qualify all of their low-income tenants. And then they submit a report to me demonstrating that all of those tenants are in compliance. So that information includes the number of people living in each unit, the income that family is making, so the total household income, the rent that they are paying, the market rate cost of that specific unit, so the amount of the subsidy or the decrease in rent. And so that's the Avalon development. So they have a company that is actually handling the marketing of their affordable units. And then the other units in the town that are also handled by a third party. Those units, whenever they come up for sale, so these are ownership units, not rental units, I receive a notification from both the Department of Housing and Community Development, as well as the agent who is ensuring that all the marketing is occurring properly and that they're income qualifying folks. And then we have to get a sign-off from the town administrator whenever these people are looking to refinance, whenever they're looking to sell, whenever there's a new family coming forward to occupy the unit. So this is for the sale units. So absolutely, there is municipal oversight. And so, you know, that way we're ensuring that the affordability remains.
And the other strength of Metro West's proposal is not only is it providing affordable housing, but it's going to be fully accessible. I think we only have 2 accessible affordable units in town now, and these buildings would have many more. And they were going to exceed the percentage of affordable units required by the Architectural Access Board. It's also going to be designed to passive house standards, which is a higher level of energy efficiency. There will be all electric in terms of your heating, cooling, and hot water. And the other thing is we saw yesterday is that the quality of the construction, the built exterior, you know, they're not using vinyl siding, they're using triple glazed windows from Europe. I mean, it's a higher level of construction you see in the marketplace. So you're getting a building, it will hold up better, require less maintenance, be more comfortable, and energy efficient. So that's a very strong aspect of their proposal as well.
Before we get to anything else, before we get to the main event, I want to have a word about public comment. And then we can come back to this. But with respect to comment, we've historically not taken a lot of public comment at these meetings, and I was not expecting to do so today. At least in my view, there's going to be multiple opportunities for that in the future, not the least of which would be the town meeting vote if it gets that far. And also, if they're awarded a contract, they need a special permit from the ZBA at least. And so there'd be a public comment for that as well. So there's those opportunities that would be available. However, we did receive public comment by email over the last 2 weeks or so, and I think it's fair to say that it was generally negative or opposed to the Metro West project. Do we want to at least read the names of the people that we got the submissions from?
Sure, we got an email from Erica Zeiger, Emma Fung, Anna Horgan Servideo, Alicia Campbell, and I believe there was one more.
Yeah, I just sent it to you, Henry, and I'm not going to be able to pronounce the last
Squalanti.
name without offending anyone.
Squalanti.
Squalanti. There. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed.
Save me embarrassment.
So I don't know whether we wanted to have any more discussion about public comment or really any more discussion about that. Anybody? I feel like we needed to have a moment on it, but per my discussion, we're not doing that.
Good try.
Yeah, well, it was worth that. I appreciate the try. So, hearing nothing more on that, do we want to, does anybody want to make a motion?
We were given a draft of the proper motion, if I remember.
I can make the motion. I move that the committee recommend to the Board of Selectmen that a contract for the redevelopment and reuse of the White Cliffs Mansion be awarded to Metro West Collaborative Development. I always mix up their last two words. Based on the committee's review and evaluation of the proposals received and the determination that the proposal of Metro West is most advantageous to the town.
I'll second it.
All right, thank you. So, is there any further discussion on the motion? Okay, so that we keep the suspense, we'll start at the right-hand side of the table. Diana?
Aye.
Aye.
Norm? Aye. Julianne?
No.
And I vote aye as well, so that carries. Thank you, everyone. Couple other things. There was some thought, and this is under the other business category. Do we need to talk about money for CPC for carrying costs? Is that something we wanted to do today?
I would think it would be appropriate to just bring it up to CPC meeting. I don't know why it would come up here.
Well, do we need to, someone asked, who's asking for the money, I guess is the question. Is it us?
Or is it DPW?
Well,
That's the question.
do you have a preference, sir?
We're relatively indifferent. I'll submit a request to CPC if it's the desire of the committee for carrying costs through September of 2025. We prepared some financial projections through September 2025. The general cost for carrying through that date is approximately $50,000. That includes a deduct of $4,300 that is projected to be remaining by September of this year. That does not have any substantial contingency in it. It covers approximately $5,000 or $6,000 a year for unforeseen repairs. For example, when a substantial tree falls onto a property on Warren or Stratton, that'll absorb $10,000 to $12,000 for removal. Items like that are not included in that $50,000. So our suggestion is somewhere between $50,000 and $75,000 request to CPC to carry the project, to carry the property going forward through September of 2025. So somewhere between 50 and 75K to cover the carrying costs through September of 25.
We're being all coy about that, but you had a full presentation prepared. So are you making the application to John, the chair of the CPC?
I will.
Okay, and I certainly will endorse that when it gets there. I've been warning them, as anybody who pays any attention to it for years, that they need to be putting money away for this, because we will be asking. All right. Next meeting date, which is sort of an odd question to have.
Before you, it is an odd question, excuse me. For those who haven't read the full proposal from Metro West Collaborative, I got a feeling we should make them aware of the timeline. Because they'll say, well, why do we have to have any kind of contingency of 2 years? Because I just need them to recognize some aspects of the timeline, so maybe just take a minute.
Sure.
All right, so the program depends, the funding program depends to make sure that they get the funding required from the federal government. So there's a series of rounds that they have to go through for that. Optimistically, they would get a funding decision May 2024. That would be optimistic, so that's a year and a half almost from now. Most likely, the funding decision wouldn't be allowed until May 2025. So we need to cover cost, that would bring us to the 2025 timeframe. So just to put that all in perspective. And if you go to the schedule on page 33, someone can actually see the breakdown of the milestones and the like. Full occupancy is expected in 2027. So this is not something that's going to happen overnight.
That's all
It's
right.
all yours now.
Thank you. So on the, the meeting date question, it's interesting, because I kind of view our mandate as having just been fulfilled 5 minutes ago. We were created by the the Select Board, to make a recommendation, and we've done it. So I mean, I'm certainly willing to assist in whatever fashion we can, but I don't know that we have any business before us going forward unless we're called to. I'm happy to hear from anybody who wants to make a suggestion otherwise. Scott?
Mr. Chairman, it would be nice to have a vote of support for a CPC application that Public Works will be submitting.
Do you need that now, or yeah, I was excited.
Before town meeting would be wonderful.
Well, at least for me, I think we could do that now. I don't have a problem with that. So does anybody want to make the motion that Scott just made?
I move that this committee writes a letter of support to CPC for continued necessary funding for the maintenance of White Cliffs.
Second.
Okay, Julianne,
Oh, aye.
Norm,
Aye.
Tom, Diana,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. So that passes. So I've removed another reason. Oh, wait, you can ask for the,
Sorry. It may be worthwhile for the committee to schedule a tentative meeting for after, when the board is expected to take action, just in the event action goes in a direction that may not be projected right now.
so in years past, we would basically come when called by the town administrator. That's obviously going to be a little bit in flux now. So, I mean, we can certainly propose a date and put it on the calendar and see if we need to use it or not. Does that sound what, or you could call us if you felt like you needed us to.
Yeah, I think we could just not schedule anything right now, and if it's determined that a meeting is necessary, then I'll let you know, and we'll try and schedule it consistent with the way we've been meeting in the past.
Okay. Anybody have any other thoughts or questions or issues on that?
Makes sense to me.
Brett, does this conclude your assignment with us?
More or less, but we can talk about that.
Okay. I mean, if we're not meeting again, I do want to thank you for the, it has been great, the effort you put into this. I certainly thank you. I think the board thanks you.
Yes, absolutely.
It was designed to be as painless as possible, and I hope that was,
I felt minimal pain.
okay, good.
Anything else from anybody else?
Yeah, just a couple quick questions. So, obviously, starting now, there's going to be a lot of input from the community. So, any input from the, so our role, we don't have a formal role anymore. So, any input, so I need to know, how do I address emails that are coming to me? I've already had a good half a dozen. If I were to respond to them as an individual, I have to be, I want to make sure I know what our role is, so I don't cause some kind of confusion that a committee member said something.
Well, I guess until I'm making this up on the fly,
Yeah.
but until the select board says we're officially dissolved, I think you're a member of this board,
Okay,
and therefore I would, retain all but you're still also a citizen, so you can talk to these people in any capacity that you want. But I guess if you're talking to us, that's when it would be, the rules, the open meeting law, that sort of thing would apply. But I think you could forward whatever you get to Laurie, I guess, would be the way to do it.
all right. Thank you. I want some guidance on.
And I know one of the things that Metro West had mentioned during their interview and also in their proposal is their desire to do community outreach. So they said during the interview and in their proposal that they're open to public comment. So I envision that they will be hosting public input sessions, so people will have the ability to provide comments and ask questions for clarification about any aspect of their proposal. So if there's still some squishiness about the first floor of the White Cliffs Mansion and what exactly, public use and access of the first floor will be. So I think that would be another opportunity for folks to ask that question and provide their feedback. And Metro West, the developer, can hear that and possibly adjust or firm up their development proposal based on that feedback received. And then, as you mentioned, during the 40B process, that's a public hearing before the ZBA. At that point, their proposal should be pretty far along, pretty well developed, but that'll be another opportunity to provide feedback.
And just a question to clarify. They will have those kind of information sessions or be open for that in advance of the town meeting.
That is correct.
Right.
That is my understanding.
That is mine
And
as well.
I would strongly recommend that that's what they do.
Just a question of clarification that I've gotten from both parties. What is required at town meeting? What approval?
I
I'm
had
not an
that.
expert in Northborough's municipal code, so I don't know. Some communities are able to enter into contracts without town meeting approval, some can't. I'm wondering what that looks like.
I believe that's still squishy.
Okay.
So I think what needs to be, that needs to be ironed out with town council. What exactly needs to happen prior to going to town meeting? Like what level of negotiation needs to take place with the Board of Selectmen? So that everybody knows what that is going to look like. And
Because traditionally it would be a conveyance of property, title, or a disposition, which is not what's occurring, at least not for this town meeting, so I'm just.
I don't think anything's happening at this time.
Okay.
yeah, one thing that we had talked about just recently, just the last couple of days, is that it may be too much of a rush to get it all done between now and just the next couple of months. So maybe it would be more reasonable to consider a special town meeting possibly in like September timeframe. So that way, all of these questions can be worked out.
I would expect that there would be a contract negotiated between the town and Metro West that would be fully baked with all of it, and it would be subject to town meeting approval. And then you're gonna need town meeting approval because it's a disposition of real estate. I think that's the same in every town. I don't know I can't recall what the quantum of vote is that you need at town
Right.
meeting, but I think that's the answer.
Yeah, and what brings this up is the disposition will likely happen at closing of financing.
Right.
So it's some date in the future, but it needs to be, if I'm a developer, I'm not gonna go start spending money on architects and engineers and applications to DHCD if I'm not reasonably confident that I've got something I can rely on as site control. That, I spend $500,000
Site
and then.
control be the purchase and sale agreement, the obligation that the town
It
will
can
sell
come
it
in
to
a
you?
number of ways.
Okay. My pay grade.
Yeah, mine too. That's for the lawyers to
Their lawyer.
figure. Their lawyers and your lawyer to whatever arrangement you come to.
Not me. That was the-
Yeah, yeah.
That was
The
the
lawyer
point I was
def-
trying to make, yes. Anything else? Good. All right.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Move to adjourn?
I think that's what we're looking for, yes. So that's one.
Aye.
Seconded. All right. Joanna?
Aye.
Warren? Aye. Tom? Aye. Diana?
Aye.
I vote yes as well. Thank you all. See you next time, maybe.